Secrecy, confusion, and now second thoughts from some within the Republican Party. That's the story so far of the Senate health bill. It was drafted behind closed doors, and now it is public and being criticized from both the left and the right. Here's my question. Do voters know what's actually in the bill, what the bill actually does? And if not, whose fault is that? A recent CBS poll conducted after the House passed its version of health care reform, but before the Senate bill was unveiled, found that 76% of Americans haven't heard enough about the GOP health plans to know what they do. Only 23% said they have a good understanding of what's really going on. It seems like everybody could use a Cliff's Notes version of what's going on, so who better to give us that than Sarah Cliff? She's the senior policy correspondent at Vox, the author of the great VoxCare newsletter. Sarah, great to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I know vote counting is likely to dominate cable news this week since Mitch McConnell is pushing for a vote before the July 4th recess. Others are saying that's too fast. Right now, 5 GOP senators are not on board yet. Is all the vote counting getting in the way of the policy talk?
I think it is, and this has been constantly true about the Affordable Care Act, that when you look at analysis of cable news coverage of health care, you see a lot more coverage of who's going to vote for it. Will this senator or that senator get on board? What kind of tweaks they want? And you see very little coverage of what the bill actually does. You don't see questions about who will lose health insurance, how will health insurance change. And I admit it's complex stuff. It is hard to cover in kind of short, fast segments. But I think a lot of people are missing out on what this actually does when it becomes kind of this political back and forth. One of my colleagues at Vox recently did a video about how we kind of cover the healthcare debate like an episode of House of Cards. You know, the drama is around is it going to pass? It's not around what does the legislation actually do?
Now, I would think if there were hearings, and certainly we're going to see some Senate debate, that will make it easier to cover the implications because we'll have sound bites and quotes from these public officials.
Sometimes, but sometimes you see a lot of just, like a lot of the debate has focused around the secrecy and the drafting. I think it's interesting that we've been really obsessed with the process with, you know, is it secret, is it non-secret? Did the Democrats keep their bill secret in 2009? And I think that has kind of dominated a lot of the policy details. And you might see that when we have the Senate debate that's expected to happen later this week, that there'll be a lot of clips on that.
You were pretty blunt in a recent column for Vox. You said, I've covered Obamacare since the very beginning. Quote, I've never seen lying and obstruction like this. Who's lying?
So I think there is a lot of lying from Republicans about what this bill actually does. And a lot of that comes from the president. He has given a number of interviews where he says, you know, this bill will cover everyone. Or his health secretary, Tom Price, has said Medicaid won't be cut. No one will lose Medicaid. Everything we know about this bill is just, it suggests that is not true. People will lose health insurance because this bill spends a lot less money on expanding health insurance. And I think there are a lot of people who get confused by this. I've spent a decent amount of time over the past few months in an area of southeastern Kentucky that voted for Trump, but also has very heavy Obamacare enrollment. There are a lot of people in that area who are expecting that this health care bill will make their health insurance better, but everything we know about it is those people will be really disadvantaged by this health care plan.
A few minutes ago on this program, Phil Donahue was saying, go interview the voters, the Trump voters. That's what you've been doing, and you're finding confusion there in Kentucky.
Yeah, I think they really, you know, listened to Donald Trump on the campaign trail, and he said repeatedly again and again in debates, you know, I'm different from the other Republican candidates. I don't want to cut health care programs. He promised, you know, I won't cut Medicaid. I'm going to cut everybody. The health care bills, both the ones in the House and the Senate, which he is, well, he spoke favorably of at some points and has since gotten a little bit of blowback, but he, you know, these bills don't deliver on those campaign promises. They cut Medicaid very significantly. They would scale back the federal subsidies that the people in Kentucky and the people in other states really rely on. But, you know, the voters, they understood. They'd watched the news. They had, you know, seen the promises that their candidate made, and they took those promises at face value.
Sarah, thank you so much. Best of luck in the coming days. You've got a lot of work to do, it sounds like.
Thank you.
Sign up for our nightly newsletter as well as Sarah's. You can sign up for ours at reliablesources.com. All the day's media news delivered to you every night. Sign up at reliablesources.com. Up next here on the program, President Trump saying the Russian hacking news is fake news, but somehow on Twitter also sort of acknowledging the hacking this week. My next guest warns of a conspiracy trap. Hear what that means in just a moment.